One important economic indicator that has a big impact on how the United States economy is shaped is inflation. A report on inflation aims to provide insight into the overall state of the economy by monitoring, evaluating, and interpreting change in the cost of goods and services over time. These papers help us to understand how various facts of society, such as consumer, corporations, and government policies, are impacted by inflation. In order to help guide economic decision, this publication analyzed inflation in order to determine its source, quantify its effects, and forecast future patterns. An inflation report has several different goals. First, by examining price change over the given time periods, it aids in tracking inflation patterns. Economists and decision makers can use this methodology to assess whether inflation is increasing or decreasing. Okay, the history of the United States is begun around 50,000 BC with the arrival of the first people. European settlers arrived in 1500 season, and by the 1760 season, there were 30 British colonies. The Sultan's colonies relied on slave labor for farming, leading to tensions with Britain over taxes, which sparked the American Revolution. The United States declared independence in 1776, won the wars in 1783, and adopted 5 constitutions in 1789. So, the United States expanded with war, but slavery becomes a major issue, leading to the Civil War in 1861. Slavery ended in 1865, but segregation continued. In the 1900 seasons, the United States became an industrial power, joined World War I, and helped win World War II. After the Cold War, the United States became the world's leading superpower. The country faced challenges like the Great Recession and the COVID-19 pandemic, but continues to value the democracy and freedom.
Now, let's move to the 10 years inflation data of the United States from 2013 until 2023. Let's get started by analyzing the data from 2013 first. For the 2013 inflation rate is 1.50%, which is 0.75% more than 2014, 0.24% less than 2012. It shows that it has the slowest increase in the 3 years. December saw the highest increase in 6 months due to rising gas price. Gasoline price decreased by 1.0% after a 1.7% increase in 2012. Food costs rose by 1.1%, slower than 1.8% increase in 2012, and has the lowest annual inflation since 2010, which is 1.5% growth. For the 2014, inflation rate is 0.76%, which is 0.75 decrease from 2013. Compared to 2015, it has increased to 0.03%, ranked 8th globally for annual inflation that impacted by falling energy price. For the 2015 inflation rate, it was 0.73%, which is 1.35% lower than 2016, 0.03% lower than 2014. Ranked 9 globally for annual inflation, energy price remained low, keeping inflation in check. The fruit price rose slowly compared to 2014. Housing costs contribute to faster growth in the core index, everything but food and energy. US all-item consumer price index rose by 0.7%, the smallest since 2008. Inflation rate for the 2016 is 2.07%, which is 0.03% less than 2017, but 1.35% greater than 2015. It was the fastest increase in 5 years, driven by 5 months of rising costs. For the major contributors, it's rising shelter and gasoline price. December saw a 0.3% increase following a 0.2% rise in November. Consumer Price Index (CPI) tracks the expense from tobacco to transportation. For the inflation rate of 2017, it was 2.11%, which is 0.20% more than 2018, 0.03 more than 2016. Producer Price Index (PPI) for final demand increased by 2.5%, up from 1.7% in 2016. Price for final demand item rose by 3.5% compared to 1.9% in 2016, driving inflation higher. More than 7% of the increase came from final demand price rises. 2018 inflation rate is 1.91%, which is 0.20% decrease from 2017 and 0.37% decrease from 2019. Consumer price fell by 0.1 in December after remaining stable in November. First drop since March, marking the lowest decrease. CPI remains a key indicator of cost from milk to healthcare. Inflation rate of 2019 is 2.29%. It was a 0.37% increase from 2018 and 0.92% increase from 2020. For the 2020 inflation rate is 1.23%. It decreased 0.58% from 2019 and low inflation period to 2020. COVID-19 pandemic caused market disruptions, leading to an increase in the cost of goods and services, which is the cause of the inflation of 2020. For inflation rate 2021 October, it was at 6.2%. It was the highest in over 30 years. Significant global inflation due to supply chain issues and change in consumer purchasing pattern from the pandemic. US inflation rising faster than other affluent nations since the first half of 2021. From December 2021 until December 2022, inflation has increased for 6.5%. The food price rose by 10.4%. Food at home has increased positive 11.8%. Food away from home has positive 8.3%. 2022 marked the highest inflation in the US in 40 years, expected to be almost 7%. Global inflation also spiked, with Germany experiencing double-digit inflation for the first time since 1951. Rising costs of food and fuel were key contributors to global inflation. Lastly, for the inflation forecast 2023, expected to decrease to 3.5% according to the IMF forecast. It's still higher than the pre-pandemic levels. For the key drivers, shift from service to good increased demand and strained supply chains. Supply chain disruptions caused by labor shortage and global tensions. Housing market impacted by more people working from home, increasing demand for the larger space, driving up property price and rates. Russia's invasion of Ukraine disrupted energy and food supply, further driving inflation.
So now I will tell you guys about the effect of inflation in United States. So the first, inflation makes life more expensive. For consumers, this means they cannot buy as much with the same amount of money. Essentials like food, housing, and transport becomes harder to afford, especially for low-income families. Second, businesses also face challenges with inflation. Higher costs for materials and wages make it hard make it hard to maintain profits, especially if they cannot raise their prices. Inflation affects workers too. As costs rise, employees demand higher wages, but not all businesses can afford this. This sometimes lead to layoffs. The government fight inflation by raising interest rate. While this helps control prices, it also makes borrowing more expensive and can lead to budget cuts in areas like healthcare or defense. Inflation impacts trade too. A weak dollar boosts exports but makes imports pricier, while a strong dollar hurts export demand. In conclusion, inflation affects everyone from consumers and businesses to workers and governments. Understanding its impact may help us make a better decisions in our daily life. So the next is I will explain on how to solve inflation in United States. So first, the Federal Reserve uses monetary policy to fight inflation by raising interest rate. This reduces demand but must be done carefully to avoid triggering a recession. The government can also reduce inflation by cutting spending or increasing taxes. Policies like Inflation Reducing Act focus on specific issues like healthcare and energy. Improving supply chains and producing more goods locally can help fight inflation. Investment in infrastructure and manufacturing are key to reducing a reliance on imports. Overreacting to inflation can lead to unemployment and a weaker economy. That's why careful planning is crucial. Inflation is not just a local issue. Global events like geopolitical tensions affect prices, so United States policies must adapt to this change. Clear communication from leaders helps manage public expectations and avoid unnecessary price increased costs by fear. In conclusion, solving inflation requires a mix of approach: monetary, fiscal, and supply side reforms. The goal is to control inflation while keeping economy stable and growing.
Other necessary and related informations for economic constructions and employment, the COVID-19 pandemic caused the US economy to contract by 3.5% in 2020, marking the first shrinkage since the 2008 financial crisis. Millions of jobs were lost and unemployment claims hit record heights with a peak unemployment rate of 14.7% in May 2020. Over 40 million Americans filed for unemployment benefits by the end of May 2020. For industry-specific impacts, certain industries such as travel, retail, and shipping were particularly hard hit. Social distancing measures and reduced consumer demand led to an 8.7% drop in retail sales in March 2020 and a significant decline in US exports, including cars and machinery. The airline industry saw massive revenue losses and flight cancellations with temporary halts in operations affecting many airports by mid-2020. For government's relief and Federal Reserve actions to mitigate the economic fallout, the government introduced relief packages like the American Rescue Plan to support individuals and businesses. The Federal Reserve reduced interest rates and implemented measures to stabilize financial markets, helping prevent deeper economic damage. for inflation and rising price. By the end of 2021, inflation began climbing sharply, peaking at 9.1% in June 2020, the highest level in 41 years. Many attributed the rise to Federal Reserve policies and other factors, while inflation eases to 4.9% by April 2023. It remained above the target rate of 2%. For digital transformations, the pandemic accelerates digital adoption among businesses, with 64% of companies already using digital tools, increasing their environment, their investments. However, 20% of jobs remain in working firms that had not embraced digital technology, limiting their ability to pay competitive wages, create jobs, or provide employee training. For economic recovery, despite the severe downturns, the U.S. economy recovered rapidly, with the recession lasting only one quarter by 2020 and employee rates refund to pre-pandemic levels. However, some industry and regions continue to face challenges, highlighting unequal recovery across sectors and areas. Recommendations: how to solve the problems based on the student opinion. So the first one, write the government's policies, which is discuss how fiscal and monetary policies affect inflation, and ask students for their views on government actions. Highlight the role of interest rate and target programs like subsidies for education or healthcare. For engage in discussions, create platform for students to share their perspective on inflation, like classroom database or surveys. This help in understanding their views and incorporating them in broader analysis. Engage in discussions, create platform for students to share their perspective on inflation, like classroom debates or surveys. This helps in understanding their view and incorporating them to broader analysis. So for the last one is encourage practical solutions. Invite students to prepare a solution for inflation, focusing on creative ideas. For example, promote financial literacy, such as innovative supply chain solution to reduce disruptions, explore energy efficient initiative to mitigate rising energy costs. So in conclusion, inflation is a critical economic indicator that shapes the U.S. economy, influencing consumer, businesses, and government policies. It trends reflect the underlying and growth over the years. Inflation in the U.S. has fluctuated due to various factors, including global supply chain disruption, economic crises like COVID-19, and shift in consumer behavior. The pandemic highlighted the complex interplay between inflation, unemployment, and government interventions, emphasizing the need for adaptive policies. While recent measures have helped stabilize inflation rates, challenges like wage pressures, rising costs, and uneven recovery persist. Addressing inflation requires a balanced approach that combines monetary policy, fiscal reforms, and supply-side strategies. By understanding its historical trends and impacts, decision-makers can better navigate economic uncertainties, ensuring resilience and sustained growth for all sectors of society.